Hello. Hi, Jim.
How are you?
Hello, Jim. Lovely to see you. How are you?
I am great. And yourself?
Very good, very good. You're looking very tanned, equally tanned to the last time I saw you. And now you're free and fancy. And what have you been up to these last few weeks since you finished with Valencia?
Um, Talking to a few companies, helping them out. Um, usually on launches, commercial launches, strategy, the things that people usually in a startup world, what we always see is it's always about the product. And founders, they love their products, right? It's their babies, and it's great. Most a lot of times they're just phenomenal products, but that's not the only thing that has to happen today. It's not just about the product and the clinical product. I always say, I'm going to assume it works. I'm going to assume what you're telling me, it does what it does. Now let's get beyond that and let's start talking about the value you're going to bring to the marketplace and how you're going to do that. And I usually get a lot of pushback on, well, it's better, cheaper, faster. And I'm like, yeah, but nobody cares. Right.
Yeah.
And, better, what does that mean? Cheaper by what? Faster by how much? Doesn't matter. And we really got to talk about, value. And everybody talks about that now. I've been talking about it for 20 years. And now it just seems people are paying more attention to what I call the multi-headed customer.
That's right. Yeah, I've heard you say that.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a multi-headed customer, and most docs are employed, and so they have people they report to, so they're conscious of them being part of a larger organization. I laugh, because when I was in spine, I started my career off in spine. I brought in a cervical plating system for one of my favorite docs in Chicago. I just walked it in, I'm walking, going to the OR, I passed the OR purchasing, and they stopped me like, "Where are you going with that?" And I said, "Well, the doc wants it. He told me to bring it in." "You can't just bring stuff in here. You go tell him he can't use it." I said, "No, you go tell him that he can't use it." And, they're like, "Fine." And so he goes, he comes back, he goes, "Well, he can use it, but, we gotta stop doing that." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." But that was a long time ago, right?
Times have changed. Yeah.
Times have changed, and so that guy, though our purchasing is part of my customer base now, right? It's everyone's customer base, so I do a lot of conversation around that. A lot of people don't like that, just be honest, they don't wanna hear it. They wanna hear, how do I get my great product in every hospital and every doctor's hands?" It's like, "Yeah, slow
How
down."
do I get my baby, my precious baby, into those
Yeah,
hands?
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So it sounds like you've done anything but put your feet up since Valencia on.
No, no, the tan, it's funny, I have very olive complected skin. I could go out in the sun for 10 minutes and come back with a tan. And so most people are jealous of that. It's just, you know, I
Well,
take my dog for a walk and I come back like I've been on the beach for an hour, 2 hours. So
Jim, I'd love to go back because you mentioned there about your tan. I mean, one of the things that, and we're going to talk loads about what you've done, your successes, etc. But I'd like to go back to actually where you started because you mentioned your tan. I know that your grandfather is Bolivian. Is that correct? So
yeah, my
tell me
father
about
was.
young Jim. Like, here you are today, 33 years later, big legend. I'm not bigging you up. But what was life like when you started out?
Well, it was interesting. So I have a master's at Thunderbird, the American Graduate School of International Management, and um, I think Thunderbird got acquired by Arizona State or they merged or something. But when I was going to school, I wanted to go international. I was gonna, go overseas and do all that. But then I met my wife, and then that changed and got engaged and came back to the
Was
city.
this all in college? Was this in college?
No, it was after college and in between going to grad school. So it was a challenge because I was in Arizona and she was in Chicago. But um we so I never went international. So I came back to Chicago and my best friend, one of my best friends, Tim Stacy, he still is working in the device industry in hips, knees and stuff. And That those years is when the big layoffs were going on, a big recession, Hatchet Jack Welch, all my friends' parents, not all of them, a lot of them were getting laid off. It was really sad, and
I remember those
so
times, yeah.
my buddies were out of college. The ones that went into med device, healthcare, and others, I asked my buddy Tim, I'm like, "Well, what's it like with the recession?" He's like, "What recession?" Right? He's like, "Jim, people get sick. It doesn't matter what the economy is. If you need a new knee, you need a new knee. If you know, that's just the way it is." And I thought that was very interesting. And so I got into it. He got me into a role. It was with a company called General Medical. I actually wrote an article about it. I was selling supplies to docs' offices. I was horrible at it, and I didn't know what I was doing.
This
Got some
critical
coaching advice. Go ahead.
Is this the one where you were, is this before you got into it where you were selling toilet paper?
That's the one I was doing. I was saying toilet paper.
So tell me, I've read
Literally
about
sell toilet
this.
paper.
I've read about this moment. I've read about this. So tell me about that moment. You got home, I think it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You flung yourself on the floor in front of your wife and
Yeah,
said, I suck. I can't even sell toilet paper. And I think you were even painting puppies' faces on the toilet paper and people leaving it on people's
yeah.
houses. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell me about that moment and
Well,
what was going through your mind.
I was I just was like, God, I made a horrible career choice. I'm terrible at this. And and there was a guy, he just retired in the last year or two. His name is Paul Kramer, and Paul stayed with that company until he retired. I think it got acquired by McKesson, and he stayed there. And he was this very humble, quiet guy and was always just doing his job. And I went and talked to him, because I was like I said, I just threw myself on the floor and I'm like, I am the worst salesperson ever in the world. And I went and talked to him and I said, what are you doing that I'm not doing? And he goes, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I go to these offices, I talk about the products, and this and that. And he goes, oh, you have the misbelief that we're selling medical supplies. I said, I have a book 3 inches thick of medical supplies. Yeah, that's what we're selling. And he goes, no, you're selling distribution services. And I was like, what do you, he's like, yeah, he's like, anybody can buy any of this from anyone. You got to create programs. And it's really funny now because how programs relate so much more today in hospitals and doctors and ASCs of acquiring new technologies and creating these holistic programs. But you got to create a program in which it's going to be attractive to them on the quantity they have to buy at one time, how often you're shipping it, the terms of payment, all these things that we were never taught in this training class. And and that's another subject I can go after, on sales training and sales development. And I sat down with him, for a good 2 hours, and he walked me through what he was doing, which nobody else was doing.
What was he doing, Jim? What was he
Well, he
doing?
was doing that. He was sitting down with accounts, and he's just like, tell me, some of the, this is going to be very simplistic, but tell me why why you don't like buying medical supplies from vendors. And they're like, well, because I got to buy 5 cases of toilet paper and I have nowhere to put it, right? I've got to buy this and I have nowhere to put it, or I want to get something that you don't have, or whatever. It was all these different things. So he customized, and General Medical at the time was very good at being able to ship small amounts of product, not large amounts, specialty products, when they're delivered, how they're delivered. And so, and without, so some accounts, for example, would like, I want a delivery 3 times a week, but I don't want to pay for delivery charges 3 times a week. Okay. So he went and did all those things that I didn't know the company could do. I will take blame for that, for not knowing it. I'm not going to blame the company. I just didn't know. I didn't look into it. I sat down with him. So then I changed the way I was doing things, and then sales started to go up. And then I was like, okay, so this isn't about, this is the other thing sales reps always talk about. It's about me and my quota. It's not. It's about your customer, what they're trying to accomplish. If you help them, if you give to them, if you serve them, then you will be served at the end, just like life. And then I got a call. My buddy, I got a call because my father-in-law was a neurosurgeon, and
Mhm.
he didn't do a lot of spinal implants, but he worked with some surgeons in the western suburbs who were spinal implant guys. And back then, you didn't have 5 spinal implant guys per hospital. You'd have maybe 20 in the whole city of Chicago, in the suburbs. I mean, there wasn't a lot. And so, um, the distributor there, Pat Pilcher, was looking for somebody, and my buddy Tim, who was working for Zimmer, called me and said, "Hey, there's an opportunity with the Zimmer distributorship for selling drills." And so I looked at both, and at the time, people don't know this, but pedicle screws were a four-letter word in the orthopedic industry. Class action lawsuits were going on. Surgeon founders like Art Steffi were getting sued. Acromed was a big company getting sued. Danik was getting sued. I mean, it was just this crazy class action
Yeah.
lawsuit because it was
It was like the Wild West, wasn't
it
it?
what
They
well, it
called
was.
it. Yeah.
Because they were indicated for sacral implantation, not vertebral body, but docs could do whatever the hell they wanted to do, and still do, and we're putting them in the pedicles, and so that gives an attorney an opportunity to go crazy, right? So class action
Mhm.
lawsuits everywhere, and no bad medicine was being done. It's just, that's the way the FDA cleared it, and so, um, I was talking to a lot of people, "Where should I go? Where should I go?" Everyone, you have to go work for Zimmer. You have to go do this. Do not go over to sophomore or Danik at the time. Do not go to Danik. If they're going to go out of business. Spine's going to go out. And I just thought, I go, if everybody's telling me to go left, I think I'm going to go right. And I just decided I'm going to go right. And I don't want to be in that crowded field. I want to be somewhere that's different, innovative, and a little bit on the edge. And I've kind of lived my whole life like that. It's just like on the edge. And
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
it's
you've always
I,
been in startups, haven't you? Always been in
yeah.
startups.
Yeah.
So
So
you want the edge. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's exciting. It's where, you can be creative, you can be thoughtful. I always talk about being curious. Startups give you the opportunity to be curious, where large medical device companies are corral. Stay in the crowd. You know, you have a matrix. This is your position. Don't get out of that box. And that just someone like me is you know it's going to kill me. It's like the lead investor for Valencia Technologies. Was having a conversation with folks, and they're like, you got to look at Jim as this wild horse, and if you take a wild horse and you put him in a corral, they'll end up just staying in the corner, and then just withering up and dying, and that's true. So I like the excitement, I like the challenge, I'm curious, I'm always asking questions. You'll hear people that have worked for me, and I'm like, they'll say something, and I'll just say why. And they
Yeah.
look and they answer it. I go, "Well, why do you say that?" And it's not that I'm literally curious. I'm seriously curious on how we get to our decision making process and why we think what we think about a market. So a lot of the decisions that I've made in my career haven't come from my head. They've come from me asking smarter, better people than me why they're doing what they're doing, just like I did with Paul Kramer, was why are you doing this? Why is it working? Why? And then, oh, okay, um, and so just asking those questions and being curious leads to, I think, excitement, better life experiences than, trugging along and doing what you're told. I was at Intellis, and I was sitting down with a board member, and he was interviewing I think, I don't know, an executive for one of his startups. He was a VC guy. And he asked him, he said, "Okay, well, you live within a matrix, and if you didn't come to work for a month, would they know that you weren't there?" Think of that question, right?
Mhm.
Big executive title, all this stuff. And the guy answered, he goes, "Yeah, probably not." You know, and I couldn't live like that,
Yeah.
where it didn't matter if I showed up to work or not. So
Jim, I'd love to take you back to, I think you told me before we joined about the time when you got into the med tech in the OR,
yeah.
going into the OR room. I think from our conversation, you hadn't really appreciated what medical devices was really about until a particular moment when a surgeon called you to one side. Can you talk me through that? if that's all right. You don't have to.
No, I I I think about it.
I'm sorry, Jim.
No, it's fine. You know, it's because it was, a a doc wanted me to talk to a patient who had a glioblastoma.
Yeah. And I think that was the time that you really, I think you said to me, you realized that what you were doing was so important. It was just not selling a device. This was like people's lives. And I
That's
can
it.
see I can see how much that impacts you. And I think that's probably what's made you such an amazing person. And you know I'd never say this, such an amazing person throughout it because you've never been about chasing the prices, chasing the awards, chasing the sales, chasing the figures, having the next exit. It's always been about the patience and the
Yeah.
technology and the difference.
Yeah, it's one of those where he said it's Doug Johnson, Doctor he's passed, but he's like, "You need to come here and talk to her and see how you're impacting life." It was yeah, it was so impactful to sit with a patient who knew she was dying, right? And was so thankful that we might give her 6 more months,
Yeah.
you know?
No, it really is.
You keep
It
that
is.
in your heart, right? It's it goes back to what I said, it's not about me. And that's what
Yeah.
when I run at sales forces and companies, and when anybody brings it back to them, that's when I'm like, you gotta reorientate yourself because
Yeah.
I can't have it about you. You can't have it about you because I can't have a sales force of 100 people, 50 people where it's all about you. Because then we've lost what we're doing. It's like I shared with you, about this. And there's nothing against software technology. We all need that in our lives. I mean, I'm building uh, a sales app, on Claude and Lovable, and it's great stuff. I love doing it. Here I am, turning into Sheldon Cooper over the weekend. Building sales apps and stuff. It's cool stuff,
Yep.
but I don't want to sell that. I don't want to sell storage space in the sky. What we do is truly meaningful,
Mm.
and if we can, right, understand that, and that's where I get passionate, where I push people, because, here I am, tearing up, but most people would say this guy's tough and, he's hardcore. Well, I am for a reason, right? And the reason is because what we're delivering matters. And I make fun of technology, but some great technologies are coming into the market, especially in image,
Yeah.
where they're picking up stuff. I mean, that stuff, I mean, how important is that? My wife had breast cancer 20 some years ago, found it accidentally. It was an accidental discovery, but today those accidental discoveries are going on all the time now. They're incidental, they call it across specialties, incidental um, growths or whatever, wherever it is in the body.
Not looking for it, but you find it.
Literally,
Yeah.
that's what it pops up. You know how incredible that is? You just saved somebody's life,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So that was, and I think I think one of those, the emotion, the passion that you have is the one of the ingredients you look for in the people that you work and hire around you. I think you've told me like you throw the rule book out of the window, don't you, when you go into an organization? So suddenly you were in your first team and you had, what was it, 248 people working for you? Tell me about that.
Well,
How did you go
yeah.
from being this person on the floor, not being able to sell toilet paper, to now
That
being in your first organization leading
yeah.
248 people?
it came, and I've talked about Paul Kramer in the past. I've written some stuff about him, you know, and it came from that understanding what we're there for and what we're trying to give to our customers. And that just kept growing with time. And then I was fortunate enough, it became sophomore Danik. We bought Danik, Ron Pickard bought sophomore, merged the two leading spine companies to make the largest spine company in the world. And then a lot of folks from US Surgical came over from leadership positions, Jim Skinner, um, Ed Trarig, Mark Laguidis, Nick Lake. A lot of these guys came over, and this gentleman by the name of Mike Baylor, who is out of Indiana, who was really a mentor of mine at this time. I was young. I mean, I was 27 years old, you know? And
And running this huge sales force.
well, no, not then, but I
Not
started
then.
there and they started just molding me and I started getting elevated. I became the first direct district sales manager for sophomore organic. Then after that, Ray Chadwick, Mike Honestchek, and they just started adding, to the list of going direct because I proved it could work because it was all through distribution and then left as the VP of sales and development 9 years later because it was just always growing, learning, sharing. And Medtronic bought us and Medtronic saw that and said, hey, why don't you come into this role because we want to be able to replicate you everywhere. But then I got a call from Al Mann about a year later, and Al asked me to come to Advanced Bionics to a startup pain management, which is now Boston Size Pain Division. And that's where we built it up to about 250, 300 folks. And that was over like a 3-year period of time, but it was built on the same principles, right? But then what's different is that it was the clinical aspect, and this is what was great about it because the device still today is the best device on the market. Back then, it was light years ahead of the technology that was out there. But we're a small little company that's after Medtronic, and they owned 85% of the market, and ANS had like 15, and we were coming in with this new device, and we were focused on because the technology was so good, we could get focal low back pain.
Mm.
And we just I said, "We're gonna focus on focal low back pain because nobody else can do it. Yes, we can do everything else, but we're gonna focus here because that's where the most, value is going to be, um, given to this marketplace for all those patients who suffer from chronic focal low back pain. So we're gonna focus there." And once we did that because we said, "We're not competing with Medtronic, we're not competing with ANS, we just want this focal low back pain patient." And they're like, "You can't treat that, nobody can treat it."
I
Doctors
was going to
decide
say, Jim, where did the idea come from? Because it sounds like nobody else had that idea. How did that come into your mind?
it comes back to where's the greatest value that I can deliver with this, right? We could do everything, so we're everything. We're going to compete with Medtronic. We're going to take all your business. That's off-putting to doctors.
Mm.
It's I want to deliver value, and this is where specifically I can deliver value. The docs would say, "But can you do this, this, this?" Yeah, we can, right? But let's just talk about what is the biggest pain that you have?
The one
Isn't
that
it
you can't solve.
the one
Yeah.
you can't treat, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah." And within 2.5 years, we had a third of the market.
So tell me,
So
because who did you hire? Because you hired a bit off the wall again, didn't
yeah,
you?
so that's where and I actually still what we did back then, I think is even more applicable today but for the same and different reasons. What I did is I hired no medical device reps, and it was for 2 reasons. I want to guarantee you 300 grand. Okay, we're a startup. I'm not guaranteeing you 300 grand for a year because you will work for 9 months, not work for 9 months, and then try working for the next three. So I've seen it doesn't work. And the other one was I have to unteach you things, right? So I want to teach you something different. I'm going to get, but that's not the way we do things. I've been in this industry for 15, 20 years. This is how we do it. And I'm like, yeah, well, conventional thinking, conventional process leads to conventional results. We have to think differently. We have to be curious about the market. When you hear that statement, this is the way we do it, you're not curious. That's the first thing that comes to my head. You're not curious, you're not a learner, you're a knower. I don't have time in a startup for that. I need people who are going to be curious, who are willing to learn, who are willing to be courageously bold and challenge the system as it exists. And we'll teach you how to do that. Just follow us. The only way I could do that was hiring people with no medical device experience. So we hired Pitney Bowes reps, ADP reps, some pharma reps, FedEx reps. I mean, we went out and hired, B2B reps,
Yeah.
and then we trained them clinically. Our training was very, very intense. And clinically we trained them.
Okay. So
A
you
lot of
gave them that.
testing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of testing and over and over again. And then even from the sales side. So it was a week of clinical and then a week of selling. So 2 weeks in an office setting in an environment where you were learning. And we had people who left. It was kinda, and now, where does this come from? My mentor's from US Surgical. So it's kind of funny, I never worked for US Surgical, but a lot of what I do is based on what US Surgical used to do. Um, and so we're all some of us are more impacted by US Surgical than we really understand, and that was one of it, was that training process. And so when we told the reps, "Go say this to doctors," I didn't get, "Well, this doctor's a friend of mine. I don't really want to say it this way. I want to do it that way." Well, then we're never going to get anywhere. They didn't know anyone. They didn't have the relationships. They didn't have to worry about offending anyone because we didn't make it offensive, but it was challenging. And I bring this up because my VP of sales at Valencia, Rich Clower, uh, we were at a meeting. It was a LUGPA meeting last year in Scottsdale, I think, and he wanted to talk to this one doc, and he was talking to him, and I was there. The doc said something. I don't remember what it was, and he goes, "Respectfully, can I challenge you on that?" That's all he said. The doc looked at him. He goes, "Sure," and he challenged him, but it was respectful, right?
Yeah.
And we ended up talking for 45 minutes after that because it was just this level setting. Let's just challenge the way we conventionally think about things and do a non-conventional thought process and walk through this. And so that's what we did at Advanced Bionics. That's why we grew so fast, and that's why Boston paid over $3 billion for it. So
I want to take a minute to say thank you to our sponsors, TTP. TTP is a leader in complex medical device development. With deep scientific and engineering expertise, they help medtech teams crack tough development challenges and make the right calls early, reducing rework, delays, and uncertainty later on. Whether you're navigating uncharted technical territory or racing towards market, TTP brings clarity and real-world judgment to the decisions that shape performance, usability, and manufacturability. By retiring risk early and grounding innovation in real-world constraints, they help you move forward with speed and confidence. To find out more, check out the show notes.
And you and Boston are familiar, aren't you?
yeah, it's
Um,
another one. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, what was the man who was at Advanced Bionic and sold that? What was,
Elman.
what did you say? Yeah, what did you say to yourself? What would you have said to yourself if you could have seen yourself on the floor all those years?
Afterwards. Well,
What would you have said?
isn't that funny though that you bring that up because it just shows you that everybody can grow, everybody can
Yeah.
change as long as you're willing to learn, right? If you're I see people who are not willing to learn. I saw it at Valencia with some of the folks, is that this is the way we've done it. And it's like, so what? You know, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant at this point. We've got to be more curious and courageously bold and challenge the status quo to develop something great. And those folks won't grow. They won't develop. And so, but when you got folks going, well, and it's funny, we'd have reps who are like, I'm going to do it my way. And then 3 months later, they're like, okay, my way's not working. I'm going to do it your way. And then they call 3 months after that and they're like, yeah, I should have done that from the beginning. And I get it, but it's an ego-driven reaction. It's an insecurity-driven reaction, and so more of it with startups going forward, I'm be looking for more of the curiosity in a person.
Yeah, and one of the things I hear a lot about that is the first time CEOs. A lot of them have, and I don't mean any disrespectfully, it's the ego. And it's often because they feel so much pressure to be perfect. I suffer from that. I'm not, but
Yeah,
but the weight of the world is on the shoulders, and actually what I'm hearing from you is, like, you learn a lot by just asking what you told me before, the stupid questions and challenging people, and you learn
Yeah,
from others.
yeah.
What
And it's
go on.
why do you think that? And they're like, "Well, but why do you think that?" Right? And why did you get to that conclusion? What if we look at it from a different perspective? Now, how would you view that? It's just simple things. It's not hard, but it's willing to put your ego down to be able to move forward. And it's funny, like being a first time CEO, I mean, it was a very depressed asset. So let's say the technologies was.
I was going
And
to ask you because it was your friend who brought, I mean, your friend is a long-time mentor, isn't he?
yeah,
And the founder. So this was the first time that you were actually in charge of the whole ship. Yeah, you've done loads of like exits, but they've never been your exit. So
right.
you walked in, your mentor asked you to join. What was that like for you?
Well, it was such a distressed asset that the first day I get there, I'm told we have an FDA audit in 2 months or 3 months, and we have a financial audit in 2 or 3 months. It was like boom, boom, my first day, and I'm like, okay, great. I have no CFO and I have no head of quality. Right? I mean, it was such a distressed asset that it was going to go under fairly soon until the new investments came in.
Can I
And
ask
so
what
what did I
made you
do?
say yes? What made you say yes to it? What made you say yes then?
Well, because the founder he brought me to Advanced Bionics. He unfortunately had some health issues and we wanted to help. I mean, it's really what it comes
Yeah.
down to. I mean, I didn't have to do this. I had two other job offers that I could have gone to and been perfectly fine with. And but it was friends were working there yeah, that some have left, some were still there. And what we did, you talk about a CEO, is that so what did I do? I called the old CFO that I knew from Advanced Bionics, who was at Valencia, and asked him to come back as a consultant to get us through this audit. I wasn't going to get you through this audit. And then from a quality side, I called the old quality guy from Advanced Bionics out of retirement to come and help build the quality department. Then we called the old manufacturing guy from Advanced Bionics who was retired to help us build our manufacturing up. I had no ego in this. These people are smarter than I am when it comes to quality, manufacturing, and finance. I'm not gonna everybody that knows me knows that, I can't do any of that, but I can find the right people that could do it. And it was funny because we ended up hiring um the guy who's running manufacturing now, Jesse Granados. And so Jesse's interviewing, and me and Jerry Schlafman, who is my ops guy in Valencia to run all the internal stuff and oversee it, we're interviewing Jesse. And at the end of the interview, I looked at Jesse and Jerry's with me, and I said, "Listen, Jesse," I go, "if you come to me or Jerry to ask us what we need to do on that manufacturing floor, you're the wrong guy, because we had no idea what in the world is going on that manufacturing floor." So, and we all start laughing and stuff. But at the end, it was serious. I'm hiring better talent to get the job done so that we can focus on the commercialization of the product. And so, and get this thing out the door and rebuild the commercial team. And so that's what we did.
Was that your goals? Like when you went in, when Jeff hired you, what did he say to you he wanted you to achieve?
Well, we just wanted to make sure we wanted one to make sure the company doesn't go under. And you don't build a company to sell a company.
No, no, not at
That's a
all.
mistake. Brian Farley was the CEO that I worked for at Intellis, and he said, it, companies are not sold, they're acquired.
Quiet,
And
yeah.
and that and that's very important to understand. So you go into it for the long-term vision, and whatever happens, happens. It's just that the timing of it worked out. We turned the organization around. We had a true, commercial team with a focus, with messaging and value props and going after and building a market.
And I
It
think
just
Medtronic
paid off.
bought, was it Altavia? Was it Altri
Altaviva. So yeah, they
Altaviva, yes.
product. And then
That seemed
Boston bought Axonics, and so this would fit in their bag. So getting up on the right trajectory and made it was the right window to exit. So but there was no
when did
plan to.
yeah, when did you start getting a feeling that things might move this way? Did
I didn't.
Medtronic acquisition? You didn't?
No, that's the thing. It's like when I was at Advanced Bionics on the pain side, I thought, I go, well, we're going to have a 7-year run at this thing. We're going to blow this thing out. And, Boston came in kind of quickly and took it. And then when I went to Intellis, I was like, "Oh, we're gonna get acquired really quick." No, like 8 years later, so there, I stopped, trying to guess because companies are acquired, they are not sold. So it depends on who wants something. Is the need there? Is the value
The
there?
timing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you have companies that are fighting. What people don't realize is, strategics are internally are fighting over budget dollars and where they're going to go. And so, um, Boston bought Penumbra for 14 billion, right? I don't know this, like nobody's talked to me about this, but I'm sure there were other deals on the table that probably have taken a pause, right? And this isn't about Boston. I have no knowledge. Nobody's talked to me about this, but I say that about any companies that you make this large acquisition, things are going to slow down. So companies thought they were going to get acquired, might not get acquired for another 6 to 12 months, or ever. So you can't time the market, when it comes to stuff like that. That's why you have to operate for the long term.
That's right. So tell me about getting that call. What was it like for you? Because have you taken these calls before? And you will have done, but this time you're the CEO. What was it like? What?
Well, well, what you don't get excited about it because did been through it enough and have done more of these presentations to people and have companies come through all the time looking to acquire. That's the one thing, for founders, startups out there, they'll say, "Oh, this big company is going to buy me. This big company is going to buy me," and I go, "Have you gotten past the BD guys yet?" And they're like, "Well, no." I go, "You're nowhere near getting acquired, right? If you're not talking to the business leaders of those units yet, you're nowhere near getting acquired."
This
So,
is a beauty parade that they're on at the
yeah.
time, is it? The beginning of it, yeah.
Yeah, and so you're just kind of like, "Okay, here it is. We'll see what happens." And, and then it went silent for a couple months and then they came back and then they were serious and then it moved quickly. So, it wasn't like, "Boom, we got a call, we're buying you." It was that was a 6-month process, and in between those 6 months, 2, 3 months, we didn't hear back from anybody, you know? And so,
What did you do in that period? Like,
you
did
keep
you?
going. You just
Yeah,
keep going. You can't be distracted by it. And I think, and like I said, I have 7 M&As under my belt, right? So
exactly.
I don't get excited about this stuff. It's going to be a process and you just got to keep moving forward.
What advice would you give to anyone who, you're absolutely right. I always say you don't build to sell, you build to be acquired. Um, so what advice would you give to people perhaps who are being approached? What should they do, look out for, the CEOs, founders out there who may be going through this or will go through this?
It's, you got to keep your head on your shoulders and you got to keep operating your business as if you're not going to get acquired. That's it. You just got to keep moving forward. And in the same time, you're probably raising money. So keep raising money, and so just keep your head and your emotions stable and just keep going forward because until the deal is signed, it is not signed. And so, you can even get a letter of intent, and we're gonna close on this day. There's still wiggle room to back out of that. So
Mhm.
so even in that in between stage, we were still operating as if we wouldn't get acquired. It's easy for me to say that. Others are panicking, and are we gonna have our
Yeah.
job? And that's hard to deal with because you don't know. Because once you sell the company, it's no longer yours. It's the acquiring companies, and they do whatever they want with it. So, um, but for but also don't take every call as a sign that you're getting acquired. I think that's the most important thing. Just know that's what their job is. BD guys, that's their job to call companies. And so, know that's part of their job and their process, and you're just living through their process until you'll know when it's getting serious, when you have to put a data room together, the due diligence starts really happening, then it's getting serious, but that still doesn't mean you're getting acquired. I mean, we took Intellis public. We had offers from companies 3, 4 years before we got acquired, but we took it public, um, and then got acquired, by Stryker. Um, so at the end, we didn't like the offer, so we went public, right? And so that's an exit in itself in a different way, but so you just have to keep your head on straight and keep moving
And
forward.
that was what I was going to ask you, like the advice that again could be given because you've got seven of these under your hat, but the advice, the mistakes that are easy for founders or CEOs to be making along the way. What could you give people like as advice when they're into these rooms? When would be a good time to walk away? And it will always differ for every organization depending on what's going on. But what are the things that people wouldn't know till they've been through it?
Um, well, it's kind of what I said is that don't get overly excited because they may not they and this has happened. Companies will come to peek, into your data room just because they want to see what you got, right? And they have no intention really, or very little intention of acquiring you. They just want to see what you have and then they leave, you know? And they go, okay, well, I think we can compete with these guys, build our own product and or go acquire this smaller company for less money to come back and compete with them. So you've just gotta you just gotta be careful, you gotta be cautious and not overly optimistic and not sharing too much, share what's needed. But look at it as like you see the TV shows, these M&As, and the arguing and the fighting and the drama. Well, it's real, and so you gotta have a very high level of discernment of who's real and who's not. And as someone who's a founder, you're so happy that somebody called and said they're interested in your company, which can then cause you not to keep your head straight with this and lose focus and lose months, if not years, not operating as if you need to continue to operate.
Is that one of the things that you see CEOs doing? You said about like founders today, they're not necessarily thinking about their product properly. Um,
Yeah.
for the commercial world today, what is the reality now compared to like 10, 15 years ago when you
Yeah.
were launching or coming to market with with a product?
Yeah. Well, first are the and everybody knows this, but it's now so apparent. Doctors being employees of large systems, whether it's a university system or an HCA system, or even from urology, there are LUGPAs, large LUGPAs that you're an employee of 100-person group, so it's different. So there's committees, there's processes to bring things in, and no, so that goes back to selling to this multi-headed customer. And as CEOs, you got to worry about the operation side, but hire the greatest operation people you can, so that you can focus on gaining market share and or if you're developing a market that you're growing that market that you're really focused in on that market. But it's funny, like my product is so great and let's say it's 20% less expensive than everyone else. Well, if you're a big IDN system and you say I'm going to save 20%, an IDN would go, I'm going to lose money switching that product out for your product just from an operational perspective. I have to change SKUs, I have to change this, I have to change that. So the money you're saving me isn't really worth anything in the first couple years. It could be long term, but 2, 3 years from now, these docs are going to want a different product anyways. So you've got to think about that. Am I bringing new patients to market? Am I bringing new revenue streams? Am I treating a subset of patients that never got treated before? You got to be focused there, but the products that are just kinda me too and just a little bit better are going to struggle in that.
Mhm.
The and we talked about a little bit about programs, like Paul Kramer was creating a program for the office to buy equipment. Well, that's programs across the entire industry now. If I'm gonna bring something in, Mark Copeland, who is the value analysis whisperer, is a friend of mine. I love that guy. His is about, how to work within the value analysis committees. And so what he's really saying is you have a multi-headed customer you have to sell to, and your value analysis committee track isn't the one that the hospital gives you. It's a different one. It's the non-conventional one. Anybody can fill out a piece of paper, submit it, and say, I'm in the VAC. What do you, well, you won't hear. I know we had a rep at Valencia who thought we told him not to do this. He did it. And 14 months later, it's still in the VAC process. It's like, yeah, we knew that was going to happen. So we've got to think more about the program. You got to call on everyone, OR directors, OR managers, purchasing obviously, but CFOs, the
The
CEOs.
IT now as well, isn't it? That's a big
Yeah,
issue, isn't it? Like with the cyber security, all that.
yeah, all of it. And like what Mark would say, Mark Copeland would say, you sell, you present business to clinical people and clinical things to business people, and both, the same way, clinical to clinical, business business. But you got to do it both
Yeah.
ways, so everybody understands what value they're getting, um, outside the fact it's better, cheaper, faster, potentially. And once you get that cohesion within a system, then you'll move faster. So, but that's a program base. Like we're bringing ecoin into practices that was a category 3. So you have to do a lot within that practice because everybody needs to know what has to be done to get a category 3 approval through the payers. So you have to have a program that calls on the office manager, the schedulers, the billers, the APPs on how they explain the product. You have to do the same at the facilities that they go to. We're using a procedure room, not an OR. And people will be like, big deal. No, that's a big deal.
It is.
No anesthesia. That's a big deal, right? So
Yeah.
but if you don't know that, you're an OR purchasing or an OR manager. Like, why do I care about this? I already have something for OAB, or I have two things for OAB. Why do I need a third? Well, this is different. This is a 30-minute procedure versus an hour and a half procedure. No OR in a procedure room that's empty half the time. Then you start to see, oh, okay. And so now you're building a program, and everyone's involved with that. That's how companies need to come to market, is understanding that. Some will say, well, it takes longer to get those things off the ground. I'm like, go ahead, go do your 10 cases with a doc and high five yourself. And then the hospital calls and says, yeah, we're not doing that.
So it's about understanding the real pain points, isn't it? Is what you're saying. Understand each person's pain points and deliver to that.
And it's also not only pain points, but what you can deliver is new unrealized gains. So you may not have a pain point, like eCoin doesn't, it solves a pain point for a doctor's practice and their patients, but for a facility, you're not solving a pain point. The only pain is, well, our procedure rooms aren't used that often, but they don't really care. But now I'm bringing in new patients and a new revenue stream. You're gaining something by doing this. Right? So there's that opportunity in building new markets. You're providing gain, but everybody has to know what they're gaining from it. It's not just the doc saying, "I want this product in," you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you've had a wonderful career, and I know that your daughters are now involved in the space as well.
Yeah.
What advice do you give them?
It's really it's everything that I just said. It's what value are you producing for your customer? It's the clinical, the economic, financial, the strategic value for the doctor, the patient, the practice, and the healthcare system. And Mark Copeland added, this operational value of making things more efficient and effective for those that are buying your product, and or the workflow in which you're bringing efficiencies to. Always have that in mind. If you have that in mind and you're curious about that, then you will succeed. But if you make it about you and your quota, you're going to fail, or you'll be unsatisfied, right? You'll struggle, and everyone will see that it's about you. And so don't make it about you, make it about everyone else. And I think that goes even with our personal lives, right? How do I give value to someone else? Not it's all about me. So if you think about it from that perspective, and that's what I teach them, is just keep that perspective and you will do well. And the other thing is too, is that, they see their dad like on podcasts, they see, LinkedIn stuff will, people will mention me, or somebody will say, I worked for your dad, or I know your dad. And I tell them, and I tell everyone, I said, you don't have to do what I did to have a good life. figured that out on your own, right? There's no I see these posts and stuff on LinkedIn. There's only one CEO of Medtronic, Boston, J&J, and Abbott. There's one, right? And so if your life is, I need to be that CEO of that company, you're probably not going to be a very happy person. Find out what your purpose is. And we hear that all the time, but what's going to make you content? You don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to be an executive to have a wonderful life. And when we put the pressure on these kids and tell them, you got to keep work, and I want them to work hard, obviously, but
Mm.
you do what you do, right? If I need great salespeople, right? I need great leaders in the field. I need great manufacturing leaders, clinical leaders, right? Um, I don't need the CEO of regulatory. I don't need a CEO of manufacturing. I just need great people that do great work and they're proud of the work that they do. And so if we can embrace that and if we can bring that into a culture, um, that people feel that, then and you as an individual feel I'm contributing. Yeah, and I don't want to be, a CEO. That's okay. You know, I go that's perfectly fine. And that's what I try to teach them. Now, if they get there and they do it, it's great. But I want them just to have a fulfilled life.
You're an enabler, and I think I also know about a lady called Linda, is that correct? Who started something that you copied that, has given you a lot of joy. It was with pieces of paper and messages.
I'm not sure.
It was around, you saw a lady and the people were having a tough time, and she used to write messages to them. Like not messages, but leave them like little notes, to make them feel better. And I think that was something you picked up as well.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. No, it was my cousin, my second cousin's wife would
Ah.
send out messages, more it was more emails. And so I always thought it was cute. I was like, "Oh, that's nice." So when the kids were in high school, I would find, motivational memes, if you will, or something, and I started sending it to my girls. And that turned into their friends, that turned into their more friends, that turned into my nieces and nephews. So I would end up, you know, getting these motivational, not all motivational, but feel good kind of stuff. Have a great day. Especially having two girls, it's just like this is my some of my daughters are like, Dad, yeah, you made us tougher than most of the boys out there. It's so so it's hard for us to, to find someone. And um but it was just to keep them positive. You're having a bad day. Everybody has a bad day. We all hide um we all hide our feelings and want to project that everything's great when it's not, and share that. I ended up actually just writing a book on that, and so I might be self-publishing um a book on uh through Kindle. It has nothing to do with medical devices. It's just about um knowing everyone's going through something, and we should all embrace that.
Absolutely, because being a CEO is one of those times when you go through some people have called it the best and the worst job. And
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts would be on that and how to keep going, I guess, just to kind of wrap up, because life hasn't been a doddle for you. It's been highs and it's been challenges.
Oh yeah.
Done tremendously well. But,
Yeah.
how do you ride through those tough times and what advice could you give us?
I say this now, because life, Jeff Greiner, the founder of Valencia Technology, said we're an accumulation of our life experiences, right? And so, if we're willing to consciously reflect on that, if we're willing to look back and take responsibility for mistakes, as well as the good things that we do, and so it's a choice on how you respond to things. And so, the way I look at it is that I could get really upset about something, or I could just choose to accept for what it is, and then let's move forward and figure out um, what we're going to do with it. Is it upsetting sometimes? Is it emotionally draining? Yes. But how you choose to react to it is going to be able to keep you going on the road forward. If you choose to divert your attention through emotions, not that human emotions are wrong, but emotionally react to something that's going to take you down the wrong path, even for a week, a day, and then try to come back to it is going to be harder. Choose to accept something for what it is, not what it's not, and then try to figure out a way forward to move it and surround yourself with people and share those challenges with people to help you make the right decision. Like you said earlier, like CEOs, I've got to be right about everything. That's ridiculous. You know, you can't possibly be, right about everything. So surround yourself with those people. And if you do that, it sure makes life a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That's a great thing. Surround yourself with great people. And when you go and hire, what tells you that somebody's great in your books?
Yeah, it's changes all the time as we go through new experiences, like the experience with Valencia, and looking at these new opportunities and thinking about what am I, looking at. Um, I am now the biggest thing for me is courage and curiosity, and not necessarily med device experiences either anymore. Because while it's important in one aspect, it's actually uh, Chris Obrey said this. I reposted on LinkedIn, but it was about when you're disrupting a market, experience becomes a liability. Because I'm no longer curious, I already know everything. You can't teach me anything, and so I want courage and curiosity, and that curiosity means you're gonna learn, and you're probably if you're curious and you're willing to learn, you're gonna take direction, and you're gonna go experiment and be willing to get kicked in the face. My face looks the way it is because I've been beat up 35 years in the medical device industry. So, but it's okay, and it's okay to fail, but when it's those people, those are the characteristics I'm looking at, and obviously a success, track record in whatever you're doing. Um, that's really more important than anything.
Jim, what would you say, just to finish off with, was the most valuable failing that you've had, if you want to call it a failing or failure?
Sure. Um, well, when I started my career, not knowing anything and just really in the deep end of things, like this is what am I doing, and then reaching out and growing, and then also there a point in my career in which I was too. That's like I said, we're accumulation of our life experiences. There was a point in my career where I was completely burnt out, right? Because I was taking everything personally. I was taking everything emotionally. I was putting this baggage on my back in which I just like I'm about to break. And that's why I reflected back and I go, well, I chose to do that. It's my fault. I chose to take these things personally, to take these attacks. Because when you go through your career like this, you do have people who are coming after you all the time and turning on you, and that's just life. It's the frailty of humanity. But
Yeah.
I took it, and so that part was a breaking point for me until I decided I'm doing this to me, right? And so I'm going to choose to not take it personally. I'm going to choose to reflect and say, well, that person's having a bad day today, and so that was the really turning point, and that allows you then to have better conversations with people. So if somebody is upset, somebody is losing their mind, you just go, must be having a bad day. Let's figure out what's going on first, and then let's solve the problem so that we can have a very constructive conversation versus everybody's emotionally hurt today and triggered and upset. Let's just calm down a little bit.
That's really, useful insight, and something I'd like to take on as well, because I do I do take a lot of things to heart. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot there to learn about. Actually, it's probably a lot about me as well. Thank you, Jim. That's been wonderful. Really loads there to learn, and thank you for all the insights that you've shared, that we can share with all the CEOs going forward.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Bye.
Bye.